Welcome to r/Prorevenge, where OP causes a cheating bully to fail high school. Last winter, around January, me, my family, and close friends were staying at our condo in Vermont for New Year's to celebrate, ski, etc. My dad owns the 8-unit complex our condo is in, and all but one had people up for the holidays. There's a decent amount of area for parking, but when there's a lot of people all there at once, it can get tight. So, one night after returning from the mountain, we parked in the spot closest to the stairs to unload everything easier. Our parking lot isn't one with actual spots or anything because it's just gravel and dirt, so it's really just eyed out and first come, first serve. A few hours later, my brother went to the car to get something from the car where there was a cardboard sign left on the car. The sign read, "Reserved parking for Unit 8. Handicapped," on both sides. And yes, they forgot the N in handicapped on both sides as well. Like I said, there's no specific spots for anyone. Unit 8 was one of the smaller units on the ground level, about half the size of the rest. The couple that rented there was sketchy to say the least. They had to be in their mid-20s, but we never saw them much, and didn't know too much about them. Let's just call them Rick and Tara. Another 20 minutes later, and I go down to the car to get some forgotten gloves. As I unlock the car, the lights alert Rick and Tara that someone's at the car, and through the window, Rick starts yelling at me, telling me I have to move the car by morning or they'd have it towed. At this point, I can also realize that Rick is on something, so I subsequently ignore him, grab my things, and head back up. I get into the condo and explain to my dad the experience I just had with Rick. At this point, he'd had enough and decided he was gonna go down there himself to handle things himself. So he goes down there to talk to him. My dad was really the only person that met him before, but it was briefly during the leasing of their unit. He knocks on the door and it's about 30 seconds until Rick angrily answers the door. He crankily asks, "What do you want?" And my dad politely explains that no spots are reserved and that it's first come, first serve. Rick instantly starts freaking out, saying that it's a handicap spot and that they're gonna call the landlord. They had little experience with my dad when they leased the place about a year before, and in that time, he was diagnosed with cancer and lost a lot of weight. With that, his appearance changed drastically. Rick didn't realize he was speaking to the landlord and kept his rant going. As my dad was going to lay it out for him, he noticed on a table in the living area that there was a pipe of sorts. Paired with the behavior and appearance of Rick at the time, my dad concluded it was a pipe of sorts for drugs. He backpedaled out of the conversation and returned back up to our condo. When he got back in, he called the cops, explaining the situation and what he saw. 30 minutes later, cops pull up and start talking to Rick. Going off what my dad told them about the pipe, one of the cops noticed it, but this time out in the open with a bag next to it. At this point, it was revealed that they were smoking crack and they were both arrested. Along with that, my dad also evicted them from the property for violating terms, obviously. We ended up renovating the whole place afterwards because who knows how long they'd been smoking that inside. The upside is that the cardboard sign still hangs in the living room and gives us a laugh each time we pass it. This story is the real estate equivalent of, "I want to speak to your manager." Ma'am, I am the manager. Our next Reddit post is from Darkly Near. Back in the warehouse days, we had an ever-growing clearance section. Because of this, the company employed a delivery driver to be solely responsible for delivering clearance items purchased by customers. The delivery driver, let's call him John, was amazing. He was a veteran of the industry, had 2 trucks, a smaller and a larger one, did most of the heavy lifting, always took the time to chat to me as I helped him load up his delivery run, would bring me beer when it was an extremely hot day, and knew I'd been busting my butt. He'd worked for a bunch of high-end furniture stores, but when the recession hit and companies went belly up or cut costs, he found himself struggling for work. The company I worked for had a problem with delivery drivers, due to the fact the company was cheap and wouldn't pay the industry rates most delivery drivers charged. John was happy to make a few concessions for cash-in-hand deliveries, and naturally, management took advantage of that. After a few problems in the warehouse, I asked John if I could get a few shifts working for him as his delivery offsider. John immediately said yes, as he had problems of his own with lazy employees. I immediately fell in love with the work. We would do a 4 a.m. start to get deliveries on the truck by 6, and if we scheduled it correctly, we could be done by 2:30. I love the physicality of it, love being on the open road, and love swapping stories with John. He would talk about his wife and kids, and I'd make fun of his tacky scorpion tattoo. The problem started when John would get his delivery run sheet from the store and would see delivery prices quoted to the customer from the manager. To give you an idea, the store would charge $95 for a local delivery. This was with a full day of deliveries and approximately 20 to 30 deliveries. John would charge slightly more as he was doing maybe 5 to 8 deliveries and they'd be all over the place as opposed to all being in a specific area. John would go in and chat with the manager and ask why a customer was only being charged $50 for a 3-seater sofa bed going up 6 flights of stairs, when normally it would be a $110 delivery charge and $100 for every flight of stairs past the first level. The manager would just shrug and say she reduced the delivery to close the sale. We'd get other deliveries where we'd have to carry a 10-piece sectional sofa up 7 flights of stairs because the customer wouldn't reserve an elevator, or in some cases, the goods wouldn't fit in the lift. We'd get the sofa inside, unbag it, connect the sections, take the rubbish away, only for the customer to hand John $30 in cash. It was soul-crushing. I remember getting the customer to sign off on the paperwork as John said he'd meet me in the back of the truck. I grabbed the last bits of rubbish and made my way downstairs and jumped into the passenger seat. John was trying not to look at me. He'd been crying. I asked if he was okay, and he kind of broke down a little and confided in me that he was struggling to pay bills, that the company I worked for was his only decent paying job, that he was getting screwed over by the manager, that he might have to sell his trucks to pay his bills. My heart went out for this guy. He was becoming a fast friend and genuinely loved his job. I began to hatch a plan based on my inside knowledge of the manager, the area manager, the general manager, and the company in general. I took John to a small bar and bought us a few drinks. We sat in a booth and I began to lay out my plan for revenge. I asked John why he didn't give the manager a price list and charge more for his deliveries. He said, "If I do that, the manager said they'd drop me as their driver and find someone cheaper." I laughed. "Call her now and quit." I explained that we had seen the run sheet for tomorrow. We had a massive run, 10 deliveries, and we already knew the manager had quoted ridiculously cheap prices, like $20 per delivery. John wasn't sure. "Look, any other contract driver would charge $200 minimum per delivery. There's no way another driver will touch this company." John got on the phone, called the manager, put her on speaker, and quit right then and there. The manager, as expected, talked a big game. She said they'd be better off without John and that he just lost his biggest contract. John hung up, looking sick and panicked. I reassured him it'd be okay. I checked my watch. The store closed at 5 p.m. It was currently 1 p.m. I promised John by 4 p.m. he'd get a call back from the manager. In the meantime, we set about creating a new list of demands that if they were to employ John, they'd do the following. 1. Charge a preset price given to them by John. 2. Pay for John's off-cider and gas. 3. For any difficult deliveries, balcony lifts, fire escape deliveries, they'd charge an additional fee. 4. That if they wanted to terminate John, they'd have to give him an appropriate notice. Sure enough, at 4:30, John's phone rings. Would you look at that? It's the manager. John answers and puts the phone on speaker. The manager, in a much more polite tone, says that if John will do the delivery tomorrow, she'll offer him a $50 gift card for the store? What? I hang up the call. John looks at me in disbelief. I tell him when she calls back, you lay out your demands, and that's that. 5 minutes later, his phone rings again. It's the manager. John answers and puts her on speakerphone. The manager starts her spiel, but John cuts her off. John begins listing the problems he's having with the company. At first he's nervous, but then the months of being screwed over kick in and he lays down the law like a champion. The manager laughs off John's request, and I encourage John to relay the next bit of information to the manager. John says, "You know as well as I do, no other contract company or contract driver would get out of bid for less than $250 for a delivery. For what you're proposing, you either sign off on my demands or good luck tomorrow." Fine. Do the delivery tomorrow and then we can." "No, I'm coming down there now. You'll sign off on everything. Then we'll load up the truck tonight and finish the delivery tomorrow." He hangs up. We go to the store and the manager looks pissed. She keeps complaining that John has her between a rock and a hard place and that John is extorting her. I can't help but point out that I'm sure John's kids would like to eat tomorrow. John slaps the new contract he's written by hand in the truck and says, "Sign it." The manager signs it, and John backs his truck into the warehouse. We notice, as per usual, it's sofa beds, glass coffee tables, the heaviest items the company sells. The manager walks out to the warehouse and smirks as we struggle to load the extremely heavy goods into the truck. As we finish, the manager has a few snarky parting words. "John, with this new contract, just so we're clear, you have to fulfill the delivery no matter what." I say, "No matter what, huh?" "Even if the customer isn't home, I expect you to make sure the goods are there. I don't want any goods coming back to the warehouse." John says, "You got it." It was a glorious delivery the next day. 80% of customer goods wouldn't fit, as the manager didn't explain to the customers that they had to measure their door frames. We had customers screaming at us, abusing us, saying it was unfair they had to now pay more than $20 and how dare we charge them more. We just laughed and complied with the manager's directive. We left every piece of furniture at their property. Some in the hallways, other in the middle of doorways. Some we just left at the front door, as some customers refused to accept the delivery as they didn't want to pay us any money at all. For the nice ones who had cash ready and were happy to pay us for our obvious efforts, we went that extra mile to get the goods in and make sure they had the best delivery experience possible. Update with what happened with John. After I quit my warehouse job and landed a few acting gigs, I finally landed an acting role on a permanent series. Once at the job, I managed to talk to one of the producers about John, and John got a job picking up the sets from the studio warehouse and transferring the sets to the studio. He would then work with the night crew to erect the sets and get them ready for the next day's shooting. I see him around the studio a lot between setups and also most nights when I rap. He's making great money and is comfortably supporting his family and putting his kids through school. And there's still a good hard-earned beer at the end of the day. And then down in the comments, OP adds some more information. The manager had to call the customers and explain they'd misquoted delivery prices. When customers refused to pay more, the manager had to pay out delivery costs by invoicing the company, which cost her a bunch of bonuses. Good, I say. She sounded like a grade A douchebag. Our next Reddit post is from In Between Student. So this happened in 2018 when I graduated high school. A quick overview of the Swiss school system. Normally, you go to school until 9th grade. If you want to go to university later, you go to grammar school, high school, from 8th to 12th grade. I decided to study and went to high school. Also, in Switzerland, in my state of Canton at least, everything under 75% is a fail. We have a really strict thing going on here. There, I quickly became friends with Chelsea, my now girlfriend, and Alicia. Alicia is the kind of person that's funny if you don't have to be around her too much. She's always the victim. She can only talk about herself, etc. But if you spend too much time with her, you're a mess. She's also never responsible for things happening to her because she grew up in the foster care system, whatever. So this happened about 2 months before our finals. Now, graduating means passing the finals, obviously, but not only them. The finals are half of your eventual grade. The other half is your last report card. If I had an A in my final English exam, but a C in my last report card, my eventual grade would be a B and so on. Alicia really struggled with that because her last report card wasn't that good. She had to excel in most of the subjects to graduate. So you would think she'd write as many notes as possible and study pretty early, right? Nope. She procrastinated until 2 months before our finals while Chelsea and I studied our butts off. Now, I was always the girl who offered her notes in our class group chat in case someone was interested. This gets important later. We had a fairly long list of things we had to be able to use in math, and I wrote notes for every single topic and kept it in a folder in my locker. I only put some of them on the group chat, just when someone was asking about a certain topic. One day, I went to my locker and they weren't there. I was freaking out. I spent weeks writing them. I looked for them for an entire week and had approximately 3 panic attacks because I thought I wouldn't pass now and had to do all of it all over again. That's when Alicia casually told me that she took them the other day when I asked her to get a book from my locker. She actually hadn't planned to tell me at all because it's not like you need them anyway. You had them long enough. If you didn't make copies, it's not my fault. The blatant entitlement was enough for me to come up with a plan. A vicious plan. Not only had she stolen my notes, if I hadn't bothered her so much with it, she wouldn't have even told me she had taken them. She was only a high school friend anyway, and I knew I'd never do anything with her again once we graduated, so frankly, I didn't give a single flip about what would happen to her. Her entitled, self-centered way was enough for me to finally burst. I apologize for making drama. It's okay, you're just like that sometimes. I was about to lose it, and just continued my school day. Now, Alicia kept calling me about notes, etc. even before that, especially my notes for various books. She'd chosen the same books, so she didn't have to study extra. I started to give her a wrong analysis and started to fake notes. Obvious enough to figure out they were wrong if she'd think herself, but not too obvious. If she'd read the books, she'd know it's BS. I did the same with our English books, and French. She already had my math notes, so I couldn't fake those, but I could fake German, French, English, chemistry, physics, and psychology. Now, after I invested so much time in faking notes, I watched it all go down a day before graduation. We went into a pub with our teacher to watch a football game I don't even remember, and she distributed our results. I passed with a 5.38. In Switzerland, the grades are from 1 to 6. 6 is the best, so about an A. And Alicia went pale. 3.21, a D-. She'd failed all of her classes but math and psychology. Whoops. It seems she really just read my notes. She didn't read the book she was supposed to read. She didn't read our textbooks. I had to hide a grin. My girlfriend thinks to this day it was cruel, but seriously? It was a damper for her entitlement and narcissism. From what I've heard, she's currently trying to repeat the year and try again, hopefully without stealing her friends' notes. I'm really amused by the idea of this girl learning fake German and French and then going into a French restaurant and trying to order food with made up words. That seems so funny to me. That was r/Prorevenge, and if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button because it really helps my channel grow.